We will be presenting on the discovery of Broca's area. In 1861, a Frenchman shot himself in the forehead, missing his brain, but completely shattering his frontal bone. His frontal bone was flipped upward, exposing his brain. His doctor was fascinated and couldn't help but grabbing a spatula and exploring the pulsing brain. His doctor pressed on different parts of his brain and asked how he felt. After pressing on one particular spot near the back of his frontal lobe, the injured Frenchman could no longer speak. The doctor would lift the spatula up and suddenly he could speak again. But as soon as he pressed on that area, the Frenchman couldn't get the words out once again. This case sparked interest in localization, the idea that specific and different regions in the brain control each mental function, such as speaking. Paul Broca was a surgeon with great interest in skulls, but not so much in localization. This changed when he met a patient, Leborgne, also known as Tan. Tan was an epileptic since he was a child and lost his ability to speak over the years. His nickname Tan came about because the only word and phrase he was able to say was Tan Tan. Eventually, Tan lost feeling in his right arm and later his right leg, forcing him to be confined to bed. Since he couldn't feel his entire right side, his bed sores went unnoticed and ended up covering his entire leg, which needed to be amputated. He was referred to surgeon Paul Broca for the procedure. After meeting Tan, Broca was interested in how he could understand language, just not speak it. Shortly after the amputation, Tan passed away. Broca, recalling a debate he recently heard over the language spot in the brain, wanted to do an autopsy on Tan's brain. The autopsy revealed a deflated left hemisphere, the cause of Tan's loss of feeling in his right side, and also a rotten cavity the size of an egg in the back of his frontal lobe. This was the same area that scientists believed to be the language area. Following this, Broca searched for other patients that lost the ability to speak, a term that became known as aphasia. This is when he met Monsieur Lelong, also known as Lilo. Lilo also got his nickname based on how little he could say. He knew 5 words, one of them being his name, Lilo. His aphasia started after he had a stroke. After Lilo died from a broken femur, Broca performed an autopsy. This autopsy would either prove his theory about language spot in the brain or prove him wrong, causing him to look like a fool for advocating that theory to other scientists. Broca did the autopsy and discovered a lesion in the back of his frontal lobe. This location is now known as Broca's area. Broca's area, located in the back of the frontal lobe, controls motor functions involved with speech production. Persons with damage to Broca's area of the brain can understand language but cannot properly form words or speak fluently. Broca's area is connected to another brain region known as Wernicke's area. Wernicke's area is associated with processing and understanding language. Patient 2, Tan, had an epileptic damage to his frontal lobe, especially the left side. During the autopsy, Broca described the area as deflated and it almost disintegrated when touched. The frontal lobe was a rotten cavity with ichor pulled, and the worst spot was on the back of the frontal lobe, which is now known as Broca's area. Patient 3, Lilo, had previously suffered a stroke. During his autopsy, Broca found a small hole in the same spot as the worst spot on Tan's frontal lobe, the Broca's area. In conclusion, the medical community learned that the area now known as Broca's area is the language node of the brain. It controls production of language, but not understanding. It was discovered that localization is true and different regions of the brain do in fact control specific mental functions. This helped advance neuroscience because doctors could now study what functions were caused by interference of certain parts of the brain. This led to discovery of locations of other functions, such as Wernicke's area, the location of the comprehension of written or spoken language.